and show your video if you want. Or you can put questions in the chat and we'll look at those at the end of the presentation. The handout for the presentation is out on the PC Club website under the meetings and then the past meetings, and Jim will add it to the chat after we get going a little bit, because depending on when he adds it in there, the people that join after that don't see the file. So he usually waits 5 minutes or 10 minutes after we start to put the handout in the chat there. So we'll wait maybe another minute and then we'll get going there. Okay, maybe we'll get started then. As I just said a couple minutes ago, you can mute your audio and turn off your video, especially if you have a slower connection. That'll make the presentation a little better there. And when we get to the end, then you can ask a question and unmute yourself or show your video. You can also put a question in the chat during the meeting. I won't look at them right away, or we'll look at the end of the presentation. And the handout will be out on the PC Club website right now in the meetings, past meetings, or Jim will add it to the chat in a few minutes there. Okay, before we get to our main topic, we'll cover a few club status, and then we'll get to our main topic. Future meetings in 2025. We're at the end of 2024. We have our monthly question and answer sessions. So the next one, first Tuesday of the month, is January 7th. And anyone's welcome to join that. We also have our next presentation, general meeting, is Wednesday, January 15th, and that'll be on artificial intelligence. By myself. I think we did one about 2 years ago. This will be an update to that, specifically talking about changes that Apple has made to their AI, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, and ChatGPT. We'll talk about what they can do and what some of the current features and functions are. Also in January, we do have our monthly Macintosh SIG. If you have an iPhone or an iPad, it's always a good thing. You did miss out on the year-end party. We had that in 235 last week, so that went well. And that's coming up on January 24th. Officers, Jim is our president, Linda is our vice president, Paul is our membership secretary, Paula is our treasurer, Chuck is our recording secretary, Mike leads the MacSig, Andrew is our communication coordinator, I'm Tom, I'm a director at large, and we do have volunteers for our various things that we're always grateful for. Members old and new, you can pay your dues to Paul, and Paul will send out a notice when your membership expires. It goes on the month that you join the club, so we don't go from a January to December basis. It's whenever you join the club. But just a reminder, if you are changing your email, make sure and notify us, because that's how we keep in touch with everybody. Suggestions for topics, you can email us or talk to any of the board members. We're always looking for volunteers to present. Could be on hardware or software that you use at work or at home. Or if you don't want to present, we do have a monthly newsletter for the members. And if you want to write a short, meaning a paragraph or a sentence or two, or a long article, we'll put it in our eBytes newsletter. Website. Past meetings and slides are out on the site, along with our past recordings. We do have our deal section, our monthly newsletter I just mentioned, and this is the link. And the link is also sent out in all the emails that we send. Just a reminder, if you haven't filled out the club survey, I think we've gotten 35 responses back, which is pretty good. I think we're currently sitting at about 96 members. But the survey, we use it to make decisions about what topics to have, and we also include the information in some of these presentations on what people are doing and how they're using their computers. So it kind of benefits everybody there, but it is important for us to get feedback on what you guys are looking for. Okay, let's get to our main topic today, which is backing up your devices. Everybody loses data at some point in their lives. It's not a matter of if you're going to lose data, it's only when you're going to lose data. The more data that you create, the better your backup plan needs to be. So we all need a plan. It's just that some people have more data to back up and it's more vital information than other people. So that's why there isn't a one size fits all in all of these things that we'll be talking about today. We'll focus mainly on the desktop or laptop backup, but there's also suggestions in here, information in here that pertain to the smartphone and the tablets. And you want to make sure that all of your data, regardless of the device that you have, is backed up some way. Excuse me. Backup does take planning and effort, but today we have lots of tools and service that can help do it. So I won't fool you and say, well, there's a magic button you push and everything is taken care of for you. No, because everybody's needs are a little bit different. We all have to figure out what's best for us and what we can do there. Okay, first we'll talk about some reasons to back up. The main thing is bad things happen, like user error. You can see from this graphic on the right-hand side, 60% of the losing files or needing to go to a backup is caused by user error. So you may go in and accidentally delete files, make changes to files, or not save, or save when you think that you're not saving. So it's user errors. Second most popular is software bugs. Because we're all using a number of packages, none of these packages are perfect. So the packages themselves can damage our files or delete things that we didn't want deleted. And so you want to make sure things are backed up. Another one is hardware failure. So hardware fails all the time. Could be a hard drive, could be the power going out. Number of things related to hardware. Next, we have theft. And over the years, I've known almost about 10 people that have had either their phones, tablets, laptops, broken into houses, condominiums, trailer homes, stolen at the airport. So theft is definitely something that can happen at any time. Another one is fire or flood, so a disaster. Nobody wants to lose their data, or in some cases, data, maybe pictures or documents that you cannot recreate. Another one is virus. That's the more rare. I know people think it happens more often than not, but viruses are very rare where you might need a backup, but it is a good reason to have a backup. Another is death, because when you die, where is your data? Is it backed up somewhere? Can your executor or your family or friends get access to data that might be important to them? And then another one is just unable to access your online accounts, whether you forget a password or you're using a particular service, let's say for genealogy, and that service goes out of business, and all of your documents and information out on that service is now gone, or you have no access to it. You want to have backups. And there are other reasons, but these are the most popular there. If you claim to have never lost a vital file, you are lying. If you've used a computer for a day or a week, chances are you've lost data of some sort. So we all should be backing up and have a plan there. What are some other reasons to back up? Well, there's good reasons to back up or to create a backup. So there's not only the bad things that can happen, but you can also use this information once you've backed it up to do your own archiving, whether it's family documents or photos or videos, and that you now have an archive. That sharing or syncing of data between devices and people. So if your backup plan is such that now you're putting your photos out on a site and it's available on your phone and on your tablet and on your laptop and can be shared in that, there's tremendous benefits with having a good backup plan there. Another one is peace of mind, because if you do have it backed up, you won't be so anxious about a virus or bad things happening and you losing your data. Okay, now that I've convinced you to do backup, the most important thing in backup is a rule. And there's a basic rule in backup, and it's called the rule of three, or sometimes called the 3-2-1 rule. And the 3 in the 3-2-1 rule stands for you need at least 3 copies of your data. You want to have original, backup of the original, and a backup of the backup. So you want to have at least 3 copies. The 2 is at least 2 of these copies should be on different devices or web services. Because if you've got them all on one device or one web service, I mentioned earlier about theft. Several people that I know, one was living in a condominium, and a thief broke in to their office, and they had a desk with their computer on, and they had an external hard drive right next to that they backed up their information to. Well, the thief didn't leave the external hard drive, didn't say, gee, I'm going to leave this because the person can then use the data and set up a new machine. No, when they stole the computer, they stole everything that was right there. So you do want to have it on different devices or web services, and we'll talk more about these options in future slides here. The 1 in the 3-2-1 rule is at least one backup must be in an off-site safe location. So you don't want everything in one spot. Similar to the story I was telling about the person stealing the computer. But also, let's say, worst case, it's a fire. Or it's you have everything in a laptop bag and somebody steals it at the airport. You can't have your backup only in one location. You need multiple locations there. Okay, next let's talk about what to back up, and that's your data. You only have to back up your current personal data and project data. Don't be a data hoarder who keeps multiple versions or copy of every file they've ever created. You don't have to keep, just like an email, you don't have to keep every email that you've ever gotten or that you've ever sent. Keep the important ones, get rid of everything else, but don't be a data hoarder. I've seen people that every time they make a change to an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document, they create a new version. Don't be one of those people. You don't need to do that. Some of the different types of data that people have is maybe it's research that you're doing, stories that you're creating, books that you do, photos, videos, scanned documents, audio recordings, interviews, and could be any other form of data there. That data, usually on a Windows device, is in what's called the users folder. And then there's subfolders that are underneath that where personal data is stored. And this is an example here. Usually you have C: users and then your username. So if you have multiple members in the family that each log in, they can each have their own directory and their own set of documents and these other directories there. This is usually the most important folder on your PC, and that contains your personal documents that are on that device. Another one that you have out there is the music directory. And the music directory, if you're subscribing to streaming services, really isn't that important. But let's say you make purchases of music, or you've digitized your record collection. I have 12,000, or not 12,000, 1,200 records. I've digitized those, and I have CDs and stuff like that. Well, that's all in my music directory. Another popular one is the pictures directory, and this is obviously photos, or if you scanned in images, where they would go. Videos is another one. So we all are starting to get more and more videos, and this is the place where you should be organizing your videos. There's also directories, other directories under the users for favorites, desktop, and if you are syncing to online services like OneDrive, you may have those drives out there also. But these are all important directories. There's no need to back up download directory because a download directory is considered a temporary spot if you're downloading from the web or from an email or stuff like that. So you don't have to back that up, and you don't have to back up temp files. And a lot of temp files start with the tilde, and that is the first thing. If you do have a Macintosh, you'll find similar folders on your device, because the Mac really isn't that much different than Windows. And so on the Mac, you do have a documents, a music, a pictures, and that's below your home folder. And so you want to do the same thing there. Okay, what to back up? Let's talk about online sites. Because if you're we're all creating more and more of our data, and that just resides on the online site. It's not a file that's locally on my laptop or on my phone or on my tablet there. There's online sites and services, and that's where your data is stored up in the cloud storage. What you should be doing is you need to do a download, or sometimes it's called an export or a sync, to take that data, take a copy of that data off of the cloud storage and move it to your local drive to create a backup. Because again, you don't want to just rely on your data being in one spot up on a cloud service there. This is an example, but all of the major ones, Microsoft, Google, and Apple, essentially all operate the same type of a way. This is just a nice service that Google has. It's called Takeout, Google Takeout. And with Google Takeout, you can select what data you want to back up. You can schedule when the backup occurs, and that's where you download. Now let's take a quick look there. If I can click on this link, you can do a search out on Google if you want, but where you'll end up is takeout.google.com. And if you have a Google account, you can save the data that you have out there. We talked about the different directories. Well, it's a little bit different in the cloud, but it's more similar than different. With all the different Google products and services, each of them, you make the choice of whether to back it up or to not back it up. And with Google, let's scroll down here a little bit, you can select which of these services you want the data backed up for. So there's 71 services that Google has that you can choose to back up or not back up. These services are things like, well, do you want your activity log? Do you want alerts? Do you want arts and culture? Now, some of these I don't use. Your calendar, your contacts, your email, OneDrive, or Google Drive, excuse me, Google Drive. And with each of these, you can usually pick a format to back it up in. So if you have your contacts, you can pick which format to back it up in. And so you can do this for all this. You can set up a schedule where it'll go and let's say once a month, it'll take all of the services that you want backed up and it'll create one or more big zip files. And then you'll get an email when Google finishes and says, these files are ready to be downloaded. And I believe you have 10 days or something like that to download the file to your local machine or to your external hard drive to physically back it up. So you can set up all this stuff very easily using the tools here. And for Google, that's Google Takeout, but again, there's similar services in Apple and in Microsoft there. Also, if you're using services like an Ancestry.com, that's where you have to go out to your Ancestry.com. There's an option in Ancestry.com called Tree Settings, Manage, and you can export. And that's where you can download all the information that you've stored in this Ancestry.com. And it lets you pick the format. And in this case, I was just saying you probably want the GEDCOM format, which makes it easy to back up or transfer data to another Ancestry service if you want. But this is just an example. Excuse me, if you use TurboTax online, you want to back up your data. And you'd have to go out to the TurboTax site and back up or export the data that way. So whatever services are that you use online, you should be planning and you should know how to back up and save that information. Okay. What to back up? I mentioned mainly we're talking about laptops, but just quickly we'll talk a little bit about phones. If you have an Android phone or tablet, automatically they're set to back up the information to Google Drive, and with that Google Takeout, you can schedule and you can download the data, and so there's information there. Samsung phones will back up the data to the Samsung cloud, but it can be backed up or can be downloaded and maneuvered from there. These things include things like photos and videos, text messages, call history, device settings. So if you lose your phone or it gets stolen, you can buy a new phone and you can won't take you that long to set up the phone exactly the way that you had it with the old phone. Also, it keeps track of your apps and some of the settings for your apps. None of these backups completely keep track of everything, but they'll save you probably 90+% of the work that you'd have to go through to set up a phone and things like that. Also, your calendars and contacts. Excuse me. These are a couple of links explaining how the Apple iPhone, how it backs up and what it backs up to. So let's see, we'll just take a quick. So this gives you some information on what's going on in your iPhone or your iPad. And so if you're not familiar with it, you should be familiar with it and see if that's adequate for your backup strategy and maybe even try and restore some of the data. So this goes through how to back up, how to restore, what to do. So there's all kinds of resources that are out there at your disposal there. Okay, where to back up. So now that we have this data, some may be up at the cloud, some may be locally on the machines, Well, where do you back up some of these things? Well, in the past, in the way past, we did it to floppy disks. Well, floppy disks didn't hold that much, and they have their own problems, but certainly we aren't using those anymore. I do know people that still have backups on CDs or DVDs, and if you do have that or are attempting to do that, don't do that. So if you do have any old backups on CDs or DVDs, convert them to another format or to a cloud service or to other sources, because CDs don't last forever, DVDs don't last forever, and especially the devices to read them or manipulate them. It's hard to find machines now that have some of these drives on them. And if they do have a drive, it may not be compatible with the drive that you used to initially create it. Okay, another common thing to back up is a USB flash drive. So a USB flash drive, that you plug into your USB port. That's okay, but that's only good for a small amount of data. It's nice that it's portable, but they are slow. And by slow, if you are familiar with an external hard drive that is a solid state hard drive, a lot of people think a flash drive and a solid state drive are the same. They are vastly different, especially when it comes to speed. A solid state hard drive can be 1,000 times faster. And so you don't want to use the flash drive unless you've got a real small amount of data. Also, these flash drives can be easy to lose. Somebody could steal it, and they fail. And the failure point is usually the connection and things like that. And most people aren't going to go in there and try and recover the data. So if you don't have it backed up anywhere else, you just lost all your data. External drives. This is definitely the preferred way to back up your data. And I recommend use 2 or more external drives and rotate them monthly. Keep one at home and one off-site, like at work. When I was working at 3M, I'd have one of my external drives at work, and because again, if there was a fire or somebody broke in or something like that happened, you can have that. Nowadays, though, you can have them in fireproof safes. That's another place to store them, kind of off-site, or with other friends and family there. When you are buying an external drive, buy the fastest drive with the fastest connection your devices support. So right now, the fastest is USB 4 or Thunderbolt 4, but a lot of people have old laptops, old desktops, old phones that don't support some of these faster things. But be aware that there are vast differences between the speeds of a USB 1, a USB 2, a USB 3, upwards of almost 1,000 times slower. And I've got a couple of old slow hard drives that are older, and some of those for backing up my data. And my data happens to be about 500 gigabytes of photos and music and documents. Well, that can take, on a slower drive, it may take 8 hours or 10 hours to write all the files on there. Whereas on a faster drive, that may be able to be done in 10 minutes or 20 minutes. So there's big differences in speed between these external drives, depending on the drive itself and the connection that the drive has. Also, I think I've mentioned before, some people will assume that all their USB ports on their laptop or desktop operate at the same speed, and that's usually not true. You may have a group of slower USB ports, and then you have a group of the faster USB ports. And look in your owner's manual to figure out which ones are the faster, and then I just put a little piece of tape and I make sure and say, oh, this is a USB 3, this is a USB 2. Well, USB 2 is fine for connecting a mouse or connecting a printer. But again, if you have an external drive and want it the fastest, make sure that you match them up to get your fast speed there. Also, I mentioned here, many Wi-Fi routers have a USB port where you can add an external drive. Can be attached and shared on your home network. So if you and your family have multiple devices and laptops and things like that, sometimes it's very convenient to hook an external drive onto your Wi-Fi router, and all the devices connected to that can be backing up to that single device there. Another place to back up to is if you do have an Amazon Prime account, you get unlimited number of photos with full resolution. So that's an excellent place to back up your photos to. So you get full resolution, unlimited photo storage. Doesn't give you unlimited video storage, so I don't recommend putting videos out on Amazon Photos because they do charge once you go above 5 gigabytes there. And you can buy extra space out on Amazon, but it's, again, I'd use it for the photos. The free photos, I wouldn't use it for anything else. Another example of photos in the past that we've talked about is if you're kind of a semi-professional photographer and use or like Adobe Lightroom, you can buy a license, a yearly license for $120 for Adobe Lightroom. That comes with 1 terabyte of storage where you can store your photos and manage your photos up there. So again, that's another option for the photos. In the past, we've talked about Google Photos. Google Photos up until 2021, you could put an unlimited number out there. So I had converted and scanned in a bunch of images, and I think I have over 50,000 images up there. I'm not paying for storage because I got most of those up there when it was free to put them up, and all these photos are grandfathered in, so I don't have to pay for that storage now. But if you do want to use Google Photos, you get 15 gigabytes of free space, and then it costs you depending on how much more space you need. The last 3 that I mentioned, Amazon Photos, Adobe Lightroom, Google Photos, good for photos. I wouldn't put videos out there because videos take an awful lot of space and will cost you a fortune. If you do want to back up your videos and also share them with other people, you can put them all out on YouTube. And it's free to put an unlimited number of videos out on YouTube. And you don't have to share them with anybody. So if you don't want anybody else to see them, just put them in your own account and nobody else on YouTube can see them. But I happen to like to share my videos with friends and family. So I create channels. You can create channels on YouTube and you can share all this stuff with friends and family. Okay, let's continue on where to back up. Cloud storage. There's lots of different online options for storing in the cloud. Before entrusting your data to the cloud, people usually want to know that their information is going to be safely stored and secure. To keep data secure, cloud systems encrypt all data. So even somebody at an Apple or at a Microsoft or at a Google can't look at your data and see what it is. It's encrypted out there. No cloud storage service has ever been hacked. People have this misconception that if I put my data up there, bad guys are going to get it and data breach is going to happen and somebody's going to get access to your data. They can't get access to your data because it's encrypted there. The most they can do, or the way that, like let's say years ago, there was a problem where Apple had some of the celebrities had photos that had been backed up in their accounts, publicized on the web. Well, that was because of weak passwords. People had guessed their passwords or had gotten their Apple password in a data breach and got access to the account and therefore the encryption that way. It wasn't because somebody at Apple, an employee or somebody said, gee, here's Scarlett Johansson's account. I'm going to look at all of her pictures. Nobody can do that unless they have your account and password. And so cloud data in general is much, much safer than data stored locally on your computer for 99.9% of the people. And also means when you do have your data stored in the cloud, you're making it available on all of your devices or to share with people that you want to share. So there's so many benefits and really no downsides. The major cloud services, Google Drive, you get 15 gigabytes for free. Then you you pay for a Google One account. That gives you 100 gigabytes for $20 a year or 2 terabytes for $100 a year. Microsoft OneDrive, you get 5 gigabytes for free. 100 gigabytes is $24 a year. 1 terabyte is $69 a year. And that you also get an Office 365. So if you like the Office products and are going to continue to use the Office products, that can be affordable and give you the online storage there. 1 terabyte for $69 a year for one user. If you have a family, then you'd need multiple, or they do have packages to give you more storage and more devices. Apple iCloud, you get 5 gigabytes for free, and then they do start charging. 50 gigabytes is $12 a year, or 2 terabytes for $120 a year. So there's all these different packages and levels. Another popular online storage is Dropbox, 10 gigabytes for free, 2 terabytes for $120. Okay, how to backup? Well, first there's different types of backup. One you may have heard of, it's called a system image. I do not recommend that. Ends up being very large and time consuming. It takes every file on your computer and creates a system image. So if something happened to your computer, you could reload the operating system, all the software, and all your data. I don't recommend that because that's so rarely needed and is kind of overkill there. On Windows, you can create what's called a Windows System Recovery USB drive, and that's handy if you do want to do that. But again, the data, we'll talk about better ways to do that. Another type of backup is what's called a full backup. So all the data that you designate, so we talked about those different directories and where those files may be. If you did a full backup, you'd be copying all that stuff every time. Another is an incremental. That only copies new or modified data since the last backup of any type was done, whether full or incremental. A complete restoration needs the last full backup and all the subsequent incremental backups. And then there's a thing called the differential. Any new or modified data since the last full backup was done. Means a complete restoration needs only the last full backup and the last differential. So there's these different types of backups, and if you use backup software or are making your plan, those are the types of decisions that you have to make there. Now you can schedule your backups. Again, kind of depends on how important your data is, whether you do it once a month or you rotate or what you do. I do mine daily, but some people can get by with weekly. You can also do incremental, and you can do it every 10 minutes if your data is really secure or really want to make sure that you don't lose anything. So you have that. This is a statement. I do not recommend a backup that uses a proprietary format or compressed files. You should be able to see and copy any file or directory on any device without any special software. So this is what I use. I use a package called Koban Reflector. It used to be called Koban Backup, and I've used it for over 20 years. It's a free, fast, free, no proprietary format, no ads, and the backup can be copied to any operating system or device. But earlier this year, the person that maintained it, or the group that maintained it, has decided to no longer make updates as of July 2024. Now, because it's such a simple backup in terms of copying and flags and things like that, I continue to use it even though it hasn't been backed up. It's safe, and I will continue to work with it for as long as I need until I find a better replacement. I haven't found a better package yet, so I continue to use this package. Within this backup or Koban Reflector, you can assign tasks. I have mine run daily at 1 a.m. because I leave my desktop on all the time. I do an incremental. Koban compares existing files and writes stuff, so it works great. There's no encryption, there's no compression, so I can take my external drive that I back it up to, I can take it to a Macintosh, I can take it to a brand new Windows machine, I can use it to move data to another computer or to a friend or a family. I can do stuff. The directories are all visible. Everything's easy to do. I include the directories we talked about earlier. I exclude information. And so it's a pretty simple backup. I do use 4 external USB hard drives, and I rotate the first of each month between a fireproof safe and my PC. In the past, I rotated between home and work. Usually takes between 1 and 4 hours for a full backup, 110,000 files of almost 500 gigabytes. Most daily backups take less than 5 minutes because I don't have that many files that change on a daily basis there. Each month when I rotate the drives, I rename the directory. So on my hard drives, depending on the size of the hard drive, I have multiple copies of backups, and I can usually go back with the 4 drives probably about 2 years there if I had to. I have multiple full backups going back 2 to 3 years on each drive. I manually delete versions when space is needed. Previously mentioned, online services all have syncs to backup. Check your backup logs regardless of the package and what you're using. Test your backups. Make sure you can restore and read from another computer. Windows 10 and 11 do have a backup built into them. You can go into Settings, Backup, File History. It's designed to back up and restore data only on that device, and it does use a proprietary format. So I don't recommend using it. I recommend Koban Reflector and not use the Windows proprietary. For Mac users, the Apple iOS comes with a feature called Apple Time Machine, which backs up it backs it up in a proprietary format also. But for most Mac users, they know even less about their computers. So I do recommend that if you don't want to get elaborate with a plan and things like that, just use Time Machine, and it takes care of everything for you there. There's some additional links here on software that's available from PC Magazine reviews and information out there. Okay, that concludes our presentation. I'm going to stop sharing that and we'll open it up for questions. Let me turn on my camera. Let me stop sharing. And we'll see if there's anything in the chat. If you do have a question, you can unmute yourself and show your video if you want. Okay, let's see. Sorry. I guess Jim is saying he couldn't find the handout, but it is out on the website if you do want the handout there.
Yeah, it must be 3M policy when we have now the unverified guests. We cannot put attachments into a meeting chat anymore.
Oh, okay. Okay, Bonnie says, if cloud cannot be hacked, how did China supposedly hack the telecom companies like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and all? They were not using cloud services. What they hacked is they hacked the data. The data was not customer data. It was AT&T's data and Verizon's data. It's like saying, gee, I broke into 3M and stole the 3M's customer information. Well, that's stored completely different on different servers, didn't use encryption, didn't have these things in there. So that's kind of what you end up with the stuff out there. So these companies, if they have cloud services, are very sensitive to the data that is being out there, and as such, it's encrypted. Now, we may or may not have talked about this before. Encryption can be hacked. It usually takes a supercomputer to hack the encryption. So if it's 128-bit encryption, it may take an average computer 30 years to hack, which usually makes it a hacker isn't going to spend the time or the resources to try and decode that, so your data is safe. But these other breaches, the breaches that we hear about, and that's by data that is not encrypted, that's stored on computers that are accessible through the internet by all these companies, including 3M. 3M certainly does have its own vulnerabilities, but all of these different companies have data, have databases, have services, have things like that data is available there. Okay, Bonnie says to send data to the cloud, it has to go through the telecom companies. Yes, you're correct there. If my connection, and if you look at your connection, so let's say I go into my browser and I'm uploading a file to Google Drive or to Microsoft OneDrive or to the Apple, all of those connections are HTTPS. The S stands for secure. That means it's encrypted from my device up to the service that I'm connecting to. So nobody in between, or anybody in between, I don't care whether you're on a public Wi-Fi, you're on your own home internet, you're on an Ethernet connected cable, nobody in between. All they're going to see is ones and zeros. They see nothing about the data that's in any file there when you're using HTTPS, which almost everything is using on the internet now. Even when you go out to the PC Club website and download or view anything, you'll see that the connection is HTTPS. It's a secure connection. Nobody in between can see what pages you're going to, what information is on that page, what you downloaded, or anything like that. So don't worry about anybody seeing your data as it's being uploaded or synced between any of your devices and the services up there. Okay, Kevin says recommendation on best valued SDDs to buy. I don't look around. Certainly, we got done with Black Friday. This is a little SSD here. You can see, what is it, about quarter-inch thick. This is a 2 terabyte Western Digital. I think I bought this for $65 or that. For 2 terabytes, you can get it as low as like the $65, or you can pay $300, $400, $500 for a drive. The difference is in the speed. So there are faster SSDs, so it depends on the interface that it supports. It depends on the speed of the SSD in there. And hard drives usually are a little bit cheaper. This is an example of a hard drive, not too much bigger there, but this is a 1 terabyte hard drive there. And I did do a presentation on drives. You can look at that if you want to really know what's going on with the different drives, because this hard drive, I could use this for 10 years and read and write 500 gigabytes of data every other day and still use it. This has a expiration date. Well, not date, expiration. Each cell or each memory location in here can be written, 3,000 times. I think it's 3,000 times. So if you're completely rewriting things every day and things like that, this may only last you a year or 2 years, and then the drive itself keeps track of the number of writes and whether it still works and marks that area, and then you no longer have access to that memory. So SSDs are nice and fast, no moving parts, great on laptops because they don't drain a battery or things like that, but they do have downsides, and the downside is you can only write about 3,000 times onto an area on the drive before it becomes unusable. So they do have a limit there.
So on a laptop, how long is that expected to last? Same thing?
Same thing in the laptop. It's 3,000 is quite a bit. So let's say you have a terabyte hard drive. It's not like you're constantly writing in the same memory location constantly there. A lot of data you may write out there, and it may not get updated for a year, 2 years, or whatever. But they do have a life. That's a reason when I'll talk about buying a reconditioned machine, and if you're buying a reconditioned machine and it has an SSD in there, you're somewhat getting a crapshoot of how much life is left in that SSD, because that SSD, if it was used for cryptocurrency mining, they may have run it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it may only have 6 months of your average usage before you start noticing that your drive getting smaller and smaller. The drive itself will not fail, so there's actually software you can go out and you can look at how many cells have been used up, the average, and so there is diagnostic software that you can get to check out SSDs, but they are a different animal than the hard drive. And like I say, the hard drive, as slow as it is, does have some advantages over the SSD.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tom.
You're welcome. Let's see. Bonnie says, do you ever delete files off of your hard drives? Why keep years of backup? Thank you in advance. Yes, I do delete because depending on the size of the drive, if I'm putting 500 gigabytes of data out there and the drive itself is a 1 gigabyte, I can only put 2 versions on that drive when it's full. So some drives I keep longer than others. But I've got some data, like when I left 3M, I took all my emails and I took a bunch of the emails that I had saved and stuff like that, and I took all my contacts and things like that. So I have some of that. Now, I've been gone from 3M for 8 years there. But again, okay, I was involved in a number of committees at 3M, and we did UI reviews, user interface reviews of a lot of different 3M applications, and I have all that information and spreadsheets and documents and checklists and things like that. So I do have some data. I am that I keep, but the majority of the data, like photos and things like that, I have my active photos. I don't keep. I don't want to have a version of 5 years ago of the active photos, that kind of thing. Okay, other
Hey,
questions?
Tom.
Yep.
This is John Stofko. I have a question about OneDrive. If I share a file on OneDrive and subsequently make changes to my file, is that also reflected on the person who I've shared it with?
That's a good question there, John. By default, when you get a Windows machine or you set up OneDrive, it'll say, do you want to sync? And if you say that you want to sync, what that does usually is that creates a directory out on your laptop or desktop called OneDrive. That directory is so you can have any number of subdirectories below the OneDrive directory. Any file that you write out there is automatically getting synced to OneDrive up on the Microsoft server. Also, if you went up to OneDrive on the Microsoft server and added a file from another machine or edited it in Office 365 or did anything to the file up there, it automatically gets synced back down to your local machine in that OneDrive directory. And so that's done by having OneDrive running constantly on your laptop, uploading and downloading files, checking for changes and things like that. Personally, I turned that off and I installed OneDrive on my laptop and desktop because I don't want that overhead. I manage what files I move up when I move a backup copy down. So I do store files on OneDrive and I have Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote. I have a whole bunch of different things on OneDrive and on Google Drive and on Apple iCloud. So you can use all these things, but understand which things are getting synced, which things aren't, and you can manage it usually any way that you want to there.
Apple has Apple has a similar thing called iCloud that shows up in the Finder. Anything you drop in there syncs. Yeah.
Well, what you're seeing on Finder is that particular option on Finder is actually taking you out to the Apple iCloud and showing you what's out there. But you do have the option of having it synced, and that's where you kind of have to decide, where do I want these files? What's going to be the system of record? Do I want it on my laptop? Do I want it up at the cloud? And if I back it up, where am I going to back it up to? Those are all decisions that you as the owner of the computer have these choices to make. And it's important to understand what's going on because there's one person at my dad's a senior living facility that's driving me crazy. She was a professor at the University of Minnesota, and she wrote a couple of books, and she was writing another book, and she had probably about 30 copies of her book on all these different platforms. So she used Microsoft Office. She had some stuff out on Microsoft OneDrive using Word out there. She had stuff on the Apple iCloud because she had saved stuff. And when she saves stuff, it'll say, do you want to save it to the iCloud? Do you want to save it locally on her iMac? and she had some files locally, some up at the iCloud, some on OneDrive, and all these different names and all these different versions. And by the time we got done, I think she had like 30 or 40 copies of her book that she was working on. It was a book with poems and graphics and things like that all over the place, and she couldn't keep track of what was going on there, and we narrowed down and deleted some of the versions. But that's a case where if you aren't careful, it's easy to end up with files and then not knowing which file is the latest, and she didn't know what was automatically getting backed up, what wasn't. And she'd go into Word and it'd show her recent files that she was working on. Well, Finder would show her recent files. It just depended on what system she used and what she was looking at. She'd see different things.
Yeah, what I use it for is, well, I don't know, let's say I have a medical record from one doctor. I'll put it in iCloud. I go to another doctor, and then I can see it on my phone, in the office. Yeah, so stuff like that.
Yep, and that's good. And Apple has an excellent package notes, and people are using that. Well, it's important to understand where is that data actually stored. And similar to Microsoft has OneNote. Well, OneNote, you cannot store that locally on your hard drive. You can create a copy, and then Microsoft will attempt to sync it with OneDrive cloud services, is where the OneNote data is stored. But that is the system of record. There's one system of record, and these others can just have copies, and the copies can get out of sync if it hasn't had a connection or you haven't used the application on that device. Okay, other questions, comments?
Go back to John's question when he said when you share a file with someone else from OneDrive, if you actually just share it as a link to your file on the OneDrive, when you update it, they see the updates. If you share it by sending it as an attachment, they get a static shot. That's the version they've got. They won't see any future changes that you make. So just to clarify that part, I mean, that's actually one of the powers of sharing something on OneDrive, or you can put it on a SharePoint. I mean, it's what we use a lot. Since we're using Teams, the files that you store in a Teams channel is really on a SharePoint that's a part of that team in the Teams environment. So that, again, is you're all working on the same copy of the file when you share it that way. Similarly, then, if you actually share the OneDrive link, whoever you shared it with, if they have edit privileges, they're editing the same file that you would be editing.
No,
Yeah, this is John Stoff again. The thing that I shared a file with another person, and it doesn't appear in his OneDrive folder, but if he goes into Edge and types in OneDrive and then has the thing shared with me, he can see it. I guess it was a little bit confusing. I thought if something was shared or something was shared with me, it would appear in my OneDrive folder. But if I look at the OneDrive folder, it's not there. I have to go log in on Edge to OneDrive, and shared with me is there. I guess what I was asking, if that shared with me is in something that I search on Edge, is that automatically updated if I make changes to the file? Maybe that's not a clear question.
Yeah, no, yes, it is. And that's why you don't see it in your OneDrive. It's because it's in the OneDrive of the person who shared it with you. So it's in their OneDrive, and you can put things in your OneDrive that make a folder. You can see their folders directly from either, however you want to look at it, but you say you're doing it through a browser, through Edge, but that's one way to do it.
Yeah, I guess what adds to the confusion is, and I do end up with a number of questions, just like you brought up there, John, where somebody will say, I put it out to OneDrive. And I say, okay, show me exactly what you did. They went in, they changed, they saved it to OneDrive. They saved it to the OneDrive directory on their desktop. They were not saving it to the OneDrive cloud service of Microsoft. If you don't have syncing turned on, that change just stays on, let's say, your laptop, stays on your laptop. It never gets up to the OneDrive in the cloud there. So Microsoft did a huge disservice by calling these directories OneDrive that are locally on your machine, because people assume that that's the OneDrive up on the cloud. And if you don't have syncing turned on, or it can take up to a couple of minutes if it's a large file, even if you have syncing turned on, it can take a couple of minutes to go from your machine up to the cloud. And if somebody else is editing it at the same time, then you have a conflict. Then you have to go up to OneDrive and you have to figure out what version am I going to make the current version. And that's where I don't recommend people do this syncing business. Decide on one system of record, usually the cloud, and then you can have, like Jim was talking about, I can have 3 people or 5 people, or as an example, you guys just did the survey. Well, the survey is a spreadsheet. There's a form that you're clicking on values. All those get updated into a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet is one spreadsheet. It's up on Google. Google handles 10 people being in there at one time and updating the file and saving at the same time. That's the type of service that you want. You don't want to have 10 different copies and then somebody's got to try and merge this stuff. You'll go crazy. You'll go crazy trying to figure out, what's active, who has what's being done there. So when you're using these cloud services, you want to make those your system of record on where you're going to edit the file and where it's going to be updated to. And because if you have a fast internet connection, now I do have a 1 gigabyte connection. In some cases, it's faster for me to access a file off of the internet than it is off of my local drive. So opening up a file, making a change, and saving it, my system of record is the cloud. Everything, as much as I can put up there, I put up there. I back up the stuff from the cloud to my local machine and then to these external drives, but my system of record where I'm making a change and where my version resides is the cloud there. Okay. The more you play with it and figure out how you want to operate with things, all of these packages, and again, whether it's Google or Microsoft or Apple, it's to your benefit to understand where am I actually saving the file. When I send a link to somebody, where is that? Is that a physical copy? Is it a link to one version out there, or was it the state of that file at a point in time? Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay, well, thanks for joining. Our next meeting, as I mentioned earlier, will be January 15th on artificial intelligence. We'll have the Q&A. Otherwise, everybody have happy holidays and get ready for our snowfall coming in the next day or two.
Thanks very much, Tom.
Yep.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Goodbye.
Yeah.